one of the things we're dealing with here that's part of this process, inevitable part of this process, is doubt. You know, you hear the teachings of the truth, and if you really are paying attention and you're really developing insight, these teachings that you hear of the truth, although they're just conceptual, at a certain point you begin to see that these conceptual teachings are pointing to something that's not conceptual, pointing to something that's actual, something that's true. And yet, given the conditioning that we experience, we have doubts about that, you know? We have doubts about who we really are because we've been conditioned to pay attention to a mental activity that's playing all the time. And that mental activity is telling you that you're the body. It's telling you that you're the personality. It's telling you that the interpretations that are being given to you in your thinking are the truth. And so that's going to create doubt about the reality of the truth because it's in conflict with the reality of the truth. It's saying that you have to be careful. It's saying that you have to pay attention because there's a lot of threat. It's saying that you have to be careful, you have to pay attention, you have to have an attitude of protecting yourself from other people and protecting yourself from the world. When in reality, an appropriate approach to the mental activity is to protect yourself from your own mind, because that's the mental activity that's producing the material that's causing you to be anxious, causing you to be fearful, causing you to be angry, causing you to be irritated, causing you to be in a bad mood, causing you not to sleep well, causing you to be addicted to distraction. Until a person is ripe, and what they mean in these teachings by ripe, until you're ready, until you're desperate enough to consider what's possible, until you're looking for a way out, and you're really seriously looking for a way out, and because of that you're really receptive to hearing anything that might come across, that might come your way, that would offer you a sense of relief from the suffering you've been in. Until that happens, it doesn't matter what anybody says to you. And what the teachers will say, if somebody is experiencing a breakdown, if somebody's experiencing a sense of intense suffering, what the teacher will say is good. This is good. Because why? Because what is it that motivates human beings to wake up? Suffering. So in that sense, suffering is good. You know, I noticed that Eckhart Tolle is talking a lot these days about the dark night of the soul. And that's a common experience as part of the waking up process, is to go through this dark night of the soul. It doesn't happen to everybody. He talked about it in terms of it happening to him. I experienced it. A lot of the teachers that teach this experienced it. Jesus talked about it. The Buddha talked about it. He called it Maya. When he was sitting in meditation, all of the demons, meaning negative thoughts, negative memories, negative emotions, fears, doubts, all of these things came to him when he was sitting in meditation. And he was experiencing the ability to be with these things and be unaffected by them. So you could say that a breakdown is an opportunity for a breakthrough. And this is why it's often the case that people that get a terminal diagnosis experience a breakthrough, or people that find themselves in some kind of situation that their mind can't handle experience a breakdown and then they experience a breakthrough. Because they experience such a deep sense of desperation, there's nowhere to turn, nothing that can be done about it. And when that happens, it could be the loss of a loved one that's close to you. It could be a terminal disease, a terminal illness that you get. Could be a major loss in your life, losing property or a large sum of money. Could be being overcome by a mental state like depression or anxiety, experiencing panic attacks, or depression where you feel a deep sense of hopelessness and despair. So this can be called the dark night of the soul, and it can be spoken of in different ways, and there's different versions of it. One version of it is the version of it that the spiritual seeker goes through. This sense of hopelessness and desperation, like I can't get out of this personality. I just can't get out of this personality. And if I don't get out of this personality, my life will continue to be a life of suffering and tragedy. So there's an experience of a breakdown. That's one version of a dark night of the soul. Another version that Eckhart Tolle was talking about is the collective dark night of the soul. And many people who speak about these things say that we're in right now a very dark night of the soul collectively, that humanity is in a dark night of the soul. Violence, murder, war, corruption, division between one group of people and another. This is the collective dark night of the soul, and we don't know how bad it's going to get. It's getting bad, it's getting worse, right? And we know we're living at a time that's different from any other time in humanity, because this is the first time in humanity where we have the ability to commit collective suicide. You have the ability to destroy ourselves, and we never had that before. And that's a real possibility. You're being naive if you don't understand that all that has to happen for the end of humanity is for somebody, some crazy person, some crazy dictator, some crazy country to launch nuclear weapons. Because the way things are designed and set up, if that happens, all the people who are in defense of themselves, their weapons go off automatically. Right? That's why it hasn't happened so far, because everybody understands, if anybody does that, we're all going to die, right? But we're living in a world that's crazier every day, and that is possibility, is a real possibility. One of the things scientists said even before we were in this dark night of the soul is just because of the proliferation of nuclear warheads, and we have the ability to blow up the planet 500 times. We have the ability to blow up the planet with one bomb. Right? So scientists used to say, even before this dark night of the soul, given the proliferation of nuclear warheads, the possibility of an accident could end our existence. An accident. And it's a real possibility for there to be an accident. So this is the world we're living in, right? And again, the teachers say, oh, that's good, this is good, right? Because if the world, the collective world, experiences being in a breakdown sufficiently, and enough people wake up because of that, right? It could be the dawn of a new conscious era. So it's a different time that's ever existed before, because it could go either way. It could be it could be the beginning of a new conscious era of humanity, or it could be the end of humanity. That's the collective dark night of the soul. My view is that the dark night of the soul is the life of the personality, right? Because the personality lives in darkness. It lives in darkness. Darkness is equal to ignorance. The personality lives in a dark state of darkness. The personality does not see things as they are. The personality is seeing a very disturbed interpretation of reality that has the personality have the capability of being destructive. So I say that this is the reason that I say, if you find yourself experiencing yourself as a personality most of the time, For you to have a breakdown would be a breakthrough. For you to have an experience of something happening that you as a personality cannot handle, cannot change, cannot cope with. For you to be in the corner, for you to be cornered as a personality presents you with the opportunity to have a breakthrough. And the breakthrough is a surrender. The breakthrough is a surrender. The breakthrough is letting go of the persistent belief that you are this body and you are this personality. Letting go of that as a persistent belief and paying consistent attention to the thought process and the emotional states that you find yourself in, with the intention of practicing your way out of being someone who acts that stuff out. The first step in being awake is you still have a crazy mind, and you still have a crazy past, and you still have the conditioning. But the first step in waking up is you can be with it instead of be it. The first step in waking up is to experience that you're awake enough that as the awareness that you are, you can see the mental activity instead of identify with it. And you understand that when you identify with it, you will be a detriment to yourself and you will be a detriment to other people. Yeah.
There are people that haven't been exposed to the teachings that I would consider happy people. So are they just naturally more in tune with their real self? Or?
I can't say. I don't know. There are a lot of people who are hell-bent on presenting themselves as being happy because looking good is one of the things a personality wants to do. Personality wants to make a good appearance. It doesn't want people to see. How many people are eager to have other people see how vulnerable they are? How many people are eager to share how terrified they are of their mortality or how terrified they are of life itself? So it's hard to tell, and it is possible. It is possible for people to spontaneously experience the natural state. It happens. It's not typical, right? We're not all going to have the blessing that Eckhart Tolle had of just having it happen, or Ramana Maharshi had of just having it happen. Most of us will be in the slow process. Most of us will be in a process where you gradually study the teachings, develop insights into the true nature of things, and then have the motivation and generate the discipline to practice meditation every day and to stay in touch with the teachings until you see it clearly and directly for yourself. You should have that as a goal. If you're not clear about the truth, if you're still confused about the truth, you should stay involved with studying the teachings, listening to them by different teachers until the day comes when you see it for yourself, when you see what you are for yourself, and when you see what you're not for yourself. One of the things Ramana Maharshi said in terms of the teaching is he said, the teaching is very simple because what the teaching is about is being able to see what's unreal. That's the simple and direct way of seeing what the teaching is about. To see what's unreal, so you stop being interested in what's unreal, you stop believing that what's unreal is real, and you start hoping and wishing and praying and struggling and coping with your experience to try and get free. Try and get free from the tyranny of your own thought process. Just stop and look at that, the tyranny of your own thought process. When you believe that the voice in your head is you, you'll suffer the tyranny of your own mind. It will torture you. It'll torture you about yourself. It will resist and struggle with and try and change what it sees to be wrong in other people, in the world, and most of all in yourself. Right? So charity starts at home. If you want to be free from the experience of being stressed out by what's happening around you and in the world, then pay attention to the mental activity that's saying what's wrong with you. That's where you have to start. Pay attention to what's wrong with you. What is it about you that doesn't work? What is it about you that you're afraid of? One of the things about fear that's very interesting and important to understand is that the reason that fear is so intimidating to people is because they're unable to be with it. Let me say that again. The reason fear is so intimidating for people is because they're unable to be with it. If you meet fear with the light of conscious awareness, you can allow it to exist without being intimidated. If you meet fear with conscious awareness, if you meet any experience with conscious awareness, you can allow it to occur without being intimidated. Because the reason fear is so powerful for most people is because they're afraid. Now listen, it's because they're afraid of being afraid, isn't it? Why don't you like fear? Why do you avoid fear? Why do you want to control situations that scare you? Because you're afraid of the experience of being afraid. Because the way your mind has it wired up, if you're afraid, something's trying to kill you. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be real. So we actually experience fear backwards. We go from the experience of being afraid and then assume something must be scary if I'm afraid, you see? But if you could meet fear with consciousness, like if you could meet anything with the light of consciousness, when you shine the light of consciousness on it, you're seeing it, and that frees you up from being it. And if you can see it instead of be it, if you can see the fear and you can allow yourself to look at it, if you can allow yourself to be aware of how it shows up as sensations in the body, and it shows up as thought activity. That's what it is, right? So if you could be present to that and experience these sensations in the body and experience these fearful thoughts, but you're seeing it from awareness, right? It loses its effect on you, and you're no longer afraid of being afraid. You know? When fear comes, you're able to be present to it and allow the experience to complete itself. Anything you can be with can't control you. Anything you can be with, you can see it realistically, and it loses its ability to control you. So this is part of the practice. If you're waking up and you're practicing meditation and you're studying these teachings, the two things that you should be paying close attention to when they arise is anger and fear. They're the two strongest emotions. They're the two emotions that cause the most damage and most destruction in people's lives. So you should be very tuned in to your mental activity and your physical sensations when it comes to anger and fear. And when you experience strong anger, the first thing you should be doing is looking at it instead of identifying with it. And understanding you don't have to follow it, even though it's intense, even though the energy may be intense. And if you go to practice this, you'll win some and lose some. If you go to practice this, you'll win some and lose some. Sometimes the fear or the anger will be so intense that you can't control yourself. We've all experienced this. We've all been angry. We've all been so angry that it uses your mouth and it uses your behavior to express itself. And when that happens, there's trouble. When that happens, you suffer. When that happens, you cause other people to suffer. It just doesn't work. Right? Same thing is true with fear. Yeah? If you can be with fear and see it in the light of awareness and meet it instead of being afraid of it, right? You can experience it to completion without it taking control over you and your body. Don't forget, the autonomic nervous system has been conditioned. And for most of us, we're in a state of dysautonomia. It's a condition, dysautonomia. It means that your autonomic nervous system is dysregulated. It means that the sympathetic aspect of it is consistently overstimulated, which means that you're always living in a state of fight, flight, or freeze. And that state may not be totally active at any particular time where you're actually fighting or running or freezing, right? But it's right under the surface. It's right under the surface. There's this concern that you're living with all the time, and there's this level of muscle contraction, there's this level of energy, emotional energy. There's this level of mental activity that's associated, right, with this dysregulation of your autonomic nervous system. That's why we're incorporating breath work, because it has a direct effect on the vagus nerve, has a direct effect on the autonomic nervous system, and it can help over time to bring it into balance. And if it comes into balance, then you can be in a peaceful state. If it comes into balance, then you're less intimidated by your nervous system and more able to experience yourself as the consciousness and awareness of that nervous system. Kabish? Any questions? So every time you come to this class, it's an exposure therapy. Every time you come to this class, you're exposing yourself to the truth, and it weakens your experience of yourself as a physical body and a personality. So it's like putting money in a bank. You know, this class meets again on Thursday at 5 o'clock, and I'm sure a lot of your minds have said to you, well, that's just 2 days from now. I've already been here on Tuesday. Why would I come back on Thursday? That's how your mind's trying to talk you out of exposing yourself to the truth. So coming here is not a matter of whether you came on Tuesday or Thursday. It's a matter of taking advantage of the opportunity as much as possible, right, to expose yourself to a reality that will allow you over time to be free from the corruption of your mind. That's what this is all about. So we'll see whether you heard me or not. I'll see you on Thursday.